Good morning, friends. Welcome and happy Halloween. I am Dr. Pansy Parkinson, Editor-in-Chief of Dear Pandemic, and I'm joined today by Hermione Grainger, who is the CEO here at Dear Pandemic and famous nerdy girl. Thanks for joining me.
It's good to be with you on Halloween, Malia.
It's good to be with you also, Lindsay. So thanks to all of our readers for posting some more great questions. I hope you have a fun and smart Halloween planned for today. We use the questions that you put in our question box to decide what we're going to talk about in our weekly question roundup here on Facebook Live and also for the upcoming week on Dear Pandemic. So if you have a question, you should go put it in our question box. We can't take questions live out of the chat because we like to have time to think about them because we are big nerds. So put them in our question box. It's on our website at www.dearpandemic.org. And while you're there, you can search for your question because we have answered 600 questions that are all the way back to March now on our website. So it's quite the resource. And thank you to our amazing volunteers who helped get everything posted on the website. Lindsay, what are you going to do for Halloween?
So it is going to be really cold here in Hanover, New Hampshire, but we are still going to see some friends outdoors, socially distanced for a big bonfire. How about you?
Awesome. Well, we are going to trick or treat in our neighborhood. And there are quite a few of our neighbors who have really embraced this idea that we can have contact-free ways to deliver candy to people. I have neighbors who have candy slides, neighbors who have candy. There's like one that has sort of a gondola system with a little trolley. So we're going to go trick-or-treating in the neighborhood. It's going to be a lot of fun, I hope.
I was so bummed. So Hanover, where I live in New Hampshire, canceled trick-or-treating. And I was like, but there are nerdy girls. There's a way to do it safely. Malia has, been writing
on all the holidays. It's like the one holiday that we now know enough for me to confidently say there's a way to do this well. But some places did cancel it nonetheless. So
I'll tell you something that as a nerdy girl, and actually, although I'm Hermione this morning, I'm actually a Ravenclaw. Malia and I were talking about this. So I am a true bookish Ravenclaw nerdy girl. And, I have to say, like, Halloween has always been one of my favorite holidays because my children get their candy and we sort them and do a candy histogram. And
we do candy histogram too.
Oh my God. See, you and I, like, kindred spirits here, my friend. And I put them into my statistical software and we run mean median mode. We've had it like 5 years running. We have a Chicago set of data and then we moved to New Hampshire. So we have New Hampshire data. And this is the first year in 6 years that there's going to be a break in my.
Oh man, that is really a bummer. Well, I'll share our candy data with you. I've never gone as far as putting them into a data analysis software, but maybe this year. That's a good idea.
It's next level. And I've had a lot of guilt as a mom because I'm not very crafty. Like you won't see yarn behind me ever, for example, but I'm really good at this. So I'm like, my kids are never going to like have the good looking crafts at like the art fair, but the science fair, there is hope.
That's awesome. So tell me, what is the modal candy? Is there a difference between New Hampshire and Chicago area?
Well, there was, and it was interesting that it was primarily related to Snickers. So Snickers, where I lived in Chicago, was what my kids came home with. And last year and the year before here in Hanover, it was much more of a potpourri.
Huh.
Which I think there's like a fitting metaphor in there for moving from the suburbs to the like wild country and the mountains.
The biodiversity is improved out there in New Hampshire.
Yes, exactly.
More than
the
just
biodiversity.
Like ratty yard squirrels, pigeons.
Oh, so should we answer some questions, Dr. Jones?
Yeah, let's do some questions.
Okay. I'm pretty excited because we are going to bring back the lightning round.
The lightning round.
Which was popular last week. So we're going to do it again. And We are going to do it a little bit differently this time. I'm just going to be the question asker for all of them, and Malia is going to be our wise question answerer. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Hey.
So wait, no, I'm not quite ready. Can I preface this just a little bit? So normally our mission is to try and help people understand and process the overwhelm of information. And so normally our MO is to help people guide you to figure out how to answer these questions yourself for your situation, right? But we have learned over the many years of the pandemic that some people just want a yes, no answer. And so this is our effort. We live to serve. So here we are with yes, no answers. This is not how we like to answer questions normally, but these ones are ones that we can yes, no. So.
And full disclosure, there was a lot of back channeling, and
yeah, actually some of these are not going to be a yes or no because we had some disagreement. So that just shows you how hard it is.
How hard it is. Okay, so with that note, here's our lightning round for this week. Jenny from San Luis Obispo, California. If I'm outdoors, should I be wearing a mask anytime I'm within 6 feet of someone outside my household?
Yes.
Corinne from Silver Spring, Maryland. Do we need to wear a mask if we are walking alone outdoors?
No, but sorry, this is not a one-word answer. You should take one with you in case you unexpectedly end up not alone.
Sarah from Boston and Maria from Bailey, Colorado, and several others too, have asked, are indoor swimming pools safe?
Indoor swimming pools are indoors. And so what matters is who else is indoors with you. There's nothing wrong with the pool. It just depends on who else is in there.
So it's the people, not the pool.
It depends.
Okay.
It's the people, not the pool, as Lindsay likes to say.
Sharon from New York. Is there evidence that grapefruit seed extract protects you from contracting COVID?
No.
Catherine from North Carolina. Is there evidence that elderberry syrup prevents COVID?
No.
Is there evidence that it makes COVID worse?
No.
Amy from Grapevine, Texas. Shout out to Dallas area, my hometown. My mom recently tested positive for COVID and thankfully had a mild case. She's now recovered, doing well. Is it wishful thinking to consider her protected and have her over for an inside visit now?
That is genuinely an unknown. We do not know the answer to that.
Don't know. Allison from Pennsylvania. Are the COVID tests that are done regularly on asymptomatic people, such as professional athletes, included when they calculate positivity rate?
Yes, they are.
Mike from New York. Does clothing need to be quarantined after you wore it out of the house?
No, I don't think so.
No. Jackson from Olympia, Washington. Should I be concerned about cooks without masks when ordering takeout?
I think, yes, you should be very concerned for their sake. Cooks should be wearing masks in the workplace.
Susan from West Bend, Wisconsin. Is it possible with the mask wearing in the USA that we will not see as much influenza this year?
Yes, that is possible. That's not the main thing we need to be worried about. We need to be worried about social distancing and maintaining that, but yes.
Jill from Albany, New York. Is it possible that virus on one surface could be transferred to another surface on our hands or on objects?
Yes, theoretically. Again, that's not the main thing to worry about, but it is possible that that could happen.
Lauren from Dallas, Texas. Yay, Dallas. Is it safe for my kids to play on the playground at public parks?
I think it is.
Me too.
This is controversial again. You should keep their hands clean and no licking the equipment, please.
Ever. Really. Tara from New Jersey. Is it safe to ride in a car with someone who is not in your family?
Yeah, this is the one that sparked a bunch of debate between Lindsay and I. And we ultimately decided that I'm not going to answer yes, no to this question. Well, I can answer the question and then I'm going to say a bunch of more things. Is it safe to ride in a car with someone who is not in your COVID bubble? No, it is not. But I think a lot of these questions that we get at Dear Pandemic are phrased as, is it safe? Is it safe to do this? Is it safe to do that? And this is really asking the wrong question. I think when we ask questions like that, we're setting ourselves up for black-white thinking about safety. And that is not how safe works, right? If you asked me even before COVID, Is it safe for me to dig in my garden? I would have to say no as a scientist, right? Because nothing is 100% safe. I mean, you could get hit by an asteroid, or I don't know, a serial killer could sneak up behind you. Nothing is just safe, the end. So safety is always relative. And I think that it's much more helpful for us to be asking questions like, is this a necessary risk for me? I fully understand that some people have to ride in a car with people outside their COVID bubble to get to work. You live in a rural area and you don't have a car. You have to take an Uber somewhere in an emergency. That is sometimes necessary. So we have to ask, what can we do to make this more safe? And is this a necessary risk? I would really encourage you to not ride in a car with people who aren't in your family if you don't have to. And if you do have to, then I would really encourage you to open the windows and wear masks.
Good job, Malia.
Thank you.
Excellent lightning round.
All right, so it's my turn to ask you a question. We have Jeff from Washington, D.C., who wants to know, should I go ahead with my hip replacement surgery? I am a 51-year-old man with arthritis that significantly decreases my daily activity and exercise. My surgery was scheduled for May, canceled by the doctor, and is now rescheduled for late November. The surgery will be performed on an outpatient basis in a surgical center. After the surgery, I'll need physical therapy at least twice a week for a couple of months. First at home and then outpatient. Is it wise to go ahead now, or should I wait until spring or summer? What do you think?
I'm so glad. I'm grateful for this question. And we've heard a variant of this question for a while now. And there's three things that I think of when I think about answering this. And the first is, as always, we don't give medical advice. And we recommend that you seek a conversation. You proactively seek a conversation with your primary care provider on this, because you can think of your primary care provider like a quarterback of your football team, right? So they see your surgery in the context of the whole football field of your life. So they're really going to have the best finely tuned radar to help you make this decision. Also, we encourage you to proactively seek a conversation from the surgeon as well. And we've provided a discussion guide to do so. We're going to drop it in the comments. It's a patient surgeon discussion guide from the American College of Surgeons. And I'm going to say something here that is not meant to offend any given surgeon, but I will say that there's a stereotype that surgeons don't always have the kind of warmest bedside manner. I know many surgeons who do. So sometimes it is helpful to have a discussion guide for any of these conversations, but you won't know your surgeon likely as well as you know your primary care provider. And so having this discussion guide, thank you, American College of Surgeons, might help. So the second thing I want to say is we have a partner, Dr. Bloomgarden at Impact for Healthcare, who does really similar work to the Nerdy Girls just in Illinois, and she's a physician. She wrote a post for us back in June about, is it safe to go back to the doctor? And this is about outpatient settings. And so we're going to drop it in the comments, but it's got a lot of really good thinking. Surgery, even in an outpatient setting, might change the game a little bit relative to something like vaccines or well-child visits, all of which are good too. But so I got on the horn with Dr. Bloomgarden last night and I asked her, hey, we have this question. It harkens back to your post from June. What do you think? Dr. Bloomgarden's first piece of advice was talk to your primary care provider. They're going to know the landscape of your situation the best. Her second reaction was, you know what? This person seems to be having pain, and pain should be prioritized right now. And if you feel comfortable and you have a good conversation with your primary care provider and your surgeon, it's good to get your pain fixed. It really is. Hospitals are doing a great job keeping patients safe from COVID, and your pain matters. So please know that you should not be prioritizing your suffering. You should be prioritizing your relief. And then last but not least, another thing that Dr. Bloomgarden and I were corresponding about is this waiting game. Should I do it now? Should I do it later? None of us can play the timing game right now in a pandemic. And we are seeing some regions coming back and taking elective surgeries offline. And so who knows when the right time to have a surgery in a pandemic is. So again, talk to your primary care, talk to your surgeon. And if they urge you to go ahead, please know that getting your pain fixed is everything, right? That's really a good thing. And I think there's a broader point for all of us out there with this question that I think we try to hit home early and often here at Dear Pandemic. Part of why we wear a mask, part of why we protect ourselves and prevent others from getting our germs is to protect the healthcare system so they can actually do surgeries like these. So when you wear a mask, when you protect yourself, when you stay smart, you are helping people preserve hospital capacity for their surgeries. And this is not elective in our normal sense of the word, even though it's something that has gotten put on ice before, these types of surgeries.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that early on, and still to some extent, when we talk about elective procedures, a lot of people think of things that are truly elective, that are, cosmetic. But this is not really an elective procedure. I mean, hip replacement surgery, and there are a lot of other examples of this that are things that could be scheduled now, or they could be scheduled in a few months, but it's not true. And in that sense, they're elective, but it's not truly a good idea to wait necessarily. I mean, it's also, if you're due for a mammogram or you're due for some other critical preventive health procedure, then you should go ahead and do that if your primary care doctor clinician is recommending it.
So our best to you, our hopes for healing.
Yes. Good luck with the surgery.
So I get to ask you a question now, Malia.
Mm-hmm.
Risha from San Diego, California. How many days do we all need to quarantine before sharing Thanksgiving dinner with someone outside of our normal bubble? 10? 14? Some attendees will be elderly and high risk.
Okay, Risha, thank you for asking about Thanksgiving. We are getting a lot of Thanksgiving questions, and I think this is the perfect topic to tackle on Halloween because it's pretty scary. Thanksgiving has all the characteristics of super spreader events, and so I think that I'm really worried about traditional Thanksgiving dinners happening. They're indoors. They happen over a long duration. At least in my family, traditional Thanksgiving is basically a whole day. People get together and finish cooking and hang out and watch the football game. And then there's a big meal, and then there's after the big meal. So you're together for quite a long time. There's eating, which has turned out to be one of the things that is common among a lot of super spreader events. And that's because you can't eat with your mask on. You're taking your mask on and off, or maybe not wearing them at all. And then you're in close proximity and talking with people for that long period of time. So I'm worried about Thanksgiving. And I think that there's a lot of potential for people to get infected at the Thanksgiving dinner table, which would be a horrible tragedy. So to answer your question, you need to quarantine for 14 days. If you want to have a traditional Thanksgiving meal with members of your family who are not typically in your household, it's 14 days. And that means quarantine means no contact with people who are not going to be at the Thanksgiving dinner. So you have to think of it like a return to April levels of vigilance, right? I realize that this is not realistic for many families, and I'm going to return to that idea after I say a few more things about timeline here. So why 14 days? It's 14 days because after you've been exposed to COVID, it takes some time for you to develop a either symptomatic or asymptomatic infection, and then to recover from that so that you're no longer shedding virus, right? And that time window is around 14 days. So what we see is that after someone's been exposed, they start incubating the virus for a few days, and then they become infectious. Shortly after you become infectious, you either become symptomatic with COVID symptoms or not. Some people never become symptomatic, but they are nonetheless able to spread the disease. Maybe as many as 45% of people who are infected are never symptomatic. So the other 55% who become symptomatic, the median is 6 days between exposure and having symptoms. But as you know, Hermione, the median means fully half of people, it's longer than 6 days. And so by 14 days, 99% of people who later go on to be symptomatic have become symptomatic at 14 days. Okay, so 14 days is enough time to capture nearly everyone who becomes symptomatic. We actually don't have any good data on when asymptomatic infections stop being contagious, because honestly, we don't sample, we don't test in a way that would capture asymptomatic infections very well. And so we don't know that. But 14 days from exposure is our best guess right now. And that's what's recommended by the CDC. You know, Risha mentioned that you're going to have attendees who are higher risk. And I really think that the risk here is that you could get your loved ones very sick with a life-threatening illness at Thanksgiving, which would be a true disaster. And so you have to be rigid with this in order to make it safe for them. And there's no way to shortcut it with a test. I'm sorry I don't have better news about Thanksgiving. I really tried on Halloween, but Thanksgiving it's tough. So, you know, I know this is unrealistic for a lot of families. As I said, not everybody can quarantine in a way that's really rigid for 14 days. And so how do you keep your loved ones safe on Thanksgiving? I think this is a real question we have to ask ourselves. And we're going to put in a link from a blog post from a radiation oncologist named Dr. Robin Schoenthaler. She wrote up a list of 5 data-driven ways to think about Thanksgiving that I found really, really helpful for just thinking through how to process the risks, how to evaluate, and then what to do, you know, when to make the call to cancel Thanksgiving, have it by Zoom, have a reduced Thanksgiving guest list, and so on. So we're going to put that link in the comments to help you try and sort out what you should do for Thanksgiving. Okay, so it is rough. I mean, honestly, the news about Thanksgiving is not good, especially considering in the United States right now, we have a ton of disease circulating. So there's really almost nowhere that I could say there's not much disease in that community. Maybe there's a way to do this with a safe bubble. It's not good timing. It's not a safe kind of event the way it's traditionally held. So it's going to have to look different. I'm sorry. Okay, so I have a question for you from Amani from Baltimore, Maryland. Amani asks us, as it's getting colder in many parts of the country, we're seeing more restaurants creating enclosed tents outside with heating. During the pandemic, we've only eaten at restaurants outside with more than 6 feet distance between us and the next table. And it seems that eating in an enclosed tent entirely negates the whole being outside part of risk reduction. Am I wrong? What do we know about how eating outside in an enclosed heated tent rates in terms of risk?
Thank you for this question. I am with you, Amani. I think of these plastic enclosed dining domes, and every ounce of my public health scientist being goes, ah! So that's my short answer is, ah!
Yeah.
My slightly longer answer is hearkening back to what Malia was talking about with respect to Thanksgiving. Indoor dining violates every single one of our SMART principles. S is for space. You cannot stay spaced more than 6 feet when you're indoor dining, whether that be inside the 4 walls of a restaurant or in a plastic dome. M is for mask. You can't stay masked when you're eating. A is for airflow. And we are in a season where we need to be making the indoors more like the outdoors, not vice versa. A plastic dome's a plastic dome. I don't care if it's on a sidewalk. Like, use your common sense.
Right.
Like, how much air is flowing through there? Come on, people. R, restricted. Do not dine in a dining dome bubble with people outside of your household. Come on, people. Come on. T is for time. Keep it short. Dining, by definition, is close, sustained contact that we long for community. It's also really good at propagating the virus. So it violates all of the SMART principles. And I've done a lot of media about indoor dining over the past few months. And always there's a but. Can we outsmart this? What if it's just my family in the plastic dining dome? Well, that doesn't sound that fun to me. But if that's your thing, I'm not going to judge. But here's the thing. like this whole pandemic is not just about you and your family. There is the wait staff who could become exposed to all the aerosols and respiratory droplets in your plastic dome. There are the people who have come before, and frankly, who knows if their aerosols are still hanging out in the tent. And there are the people who potentially come after. There are also the people who work back of the house, who make your experience possible and who you never see, but with whom you could be spreading germs if you choose to share air with the wait staff. So look, while I am all for harm reduction, like the yes, no questions Malia addressed to earlier, it is hard for me to understand how eating at a indoor restaurant is necessary. If you want to support restaurant owners like I do takeout, give big tips. They get shared with the wait staff, support them financially. Do not eat indoors at a restaurant right now. End of rant.
Yeah. Yeah, and to that point, you know, when I said that it's not safe to ride in a car with other people, there are situations where you have to get to work in a car or bus or whatever with other people. I don't know if there are situations where you have to eat out.
I don't know. I never say never. We're scientists.
Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe there is one.
I am unable to find them. Maybe
let's say this. It seems low priority.
It seems low priority.
And I love that take that the goal is to make the inside more like the outside, not make the outside more like the inside. It's tough because it's getting cold.
I know. So who wants to sit in a plastic dome on the sidewalk, and you're still cold? I mean, really, I'm having a hard time with this. And I'm doing a lot. This was the question for those who may have had the opportunity to tune in last week. Malia asked me a lightning round question about indoor dining. And then she asked, what's the one you wish you could have said more? Indoor dining.
That was the one, yeah. And we actually got a comment during the live stream that was like, is it safe to eat in I think the question was, is it safe to eat in a tent with walls? And then somebody asked, what about a tent without walls? It's like, there's always an if. Can we just not do this?
There's always an if. I mean, look, guys, y'all are smart. We are smart humans. You know if a situation looks like the air is flowing more like the outdoors or the indoors. So don't think that there's a shortcut here. Like sitting in a plastic dome is indoors. I don't care, right? Like I don't care if it's on.
I'm really interested in this idea of how we acclimate to risk and how we start to like shortcut how risky is the situation as the pandemic wears on. And we're seeing this a lot with people who think that their best friends or their loved ones, even though they're in a different household, they kind of don't count as exposures because they're people we know, right? And they're people we trust. But the fact is, people we trust could still accidentally give us COVID. So it's kind of it's a fallacy to imagine that the people that we know are low risk. And similarly, I think that we just get tired of evaluating all these risk scenarios and kind of give up. And then when we see other people doing it, we're like, well, that must be okay, right? That's what they're doing. Somebody surely vetted this idea. So.
But I think there's like a lesson here. And I write about uncertainty and what it's doing to our brains and our thought processes pretty regularly, I'd say, on Dear Pandemic. And Malia's point is a good one. And what we need to know is that we are all prone to falling to these fallacies, nerdy girls included. So you need to check yourself. When you read cognitive scientists about how do I avoid falling into the fallacy trap, one, know you and me and Malia are all vulnerable to it. It's just the way our brains work. Two, do a gut check against an independent expert. So I have Fauci in my mind a lot of the time. I also have the Nerdy Girl team, but you need to check yourself because we are all vulnerable to risk fallacies, and most especially when it comes to those who we know.
Yeah.
So, Leah, your point is like so important.
So let's just get concrete. How do you check yourself? Because I frame this in a particular way when I'm thinking about it. And what I think is, okay, here's my idea. I want to have this. I want to go trick-or-treating with my kids, and I want to have a bonfire in my driveway, and I want to have we have like 3 families we're really close with here, and I want to have them at my bonfire. So it's 8 adults, 8 kids outside. And then I think, okay, if one of us has COVID and then it's 2 weeks from now and we all have COVID, how am I going to feel about having done that? And like invariably, I'm like, yeah, it's not that important. I guess there are some times when it is that important, but you know, having my bonfire in my driveway, probably not that important.
So I run everything through the SMART protocol, and then I say, what's the upside?
Yeah.
That's my check. Run it through SMART and then say, what's the upside?
Yeah. So you check, does it have space? Are people wearing masks? Is there air? Is it restricted? Is the time short? And it's interesting because
if it violates any of those, can I finish real quick? If it violates any of those, then I ask the question you just asked, like, to what benefit and to what disaster?
Yeah. Well, okay, interesting, really interesting discussion. So that is all we have time for today. Thanks for hanging out with us as always. We're going to see you next week for more Q&A. And if you have a question, you can submit it in our question box. It's on our website at dearpandemic.org. And we will read all those questions as we always do and use them to plan our content for the upcoming week. So stay sane, stay safe, and have a happy Halloween, everybody.